Welcome back to Bargirl, Baddies. Today's story is one that's going to hit different for a lot of you watching, especially if you've ever felt that pull towards starting over somewhere new, somewhere warm, somewhere that promises a second chance at life when everything back home feels cold and finished. This is the story of Derek Nolan, 58 years old, from Brisbane, Australia. Derek was a hard-working bloke who spent 30 years building an electrical business from the ground up, raised 2 kids, stayed married for over 2 decades, and did everything he thought he was supposed to do. Then his marriage fell apart, his kids drifted away, and he found himself staring down retirement in a rental apartment that echoed with silence and regret. So, Derek made a choice that probably seemed brave at the time. He sold his business, pocketed 480,000 Australian dollars, and bought a one-way ticket to Pattaya, Thailand. He thought he'd found paradise. He thought he'd found love. He thought he'd finally gotten life right. Instead, in just 18 months, Derek lost almost everything. His savings evaporated. The woman he loved disappeared with his laptop, his gold jewellery, and whatever was left of his dignity. And when the money ran out, he found himself on a plane back to Australia with $86,000 to his name and a whole lot of expensive lessons learned the hard way. Before we dive into Derek's story, do me a favour. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever made a big life change chasing something better, or if you've seen someone you care about lose themselves in a dream that turned into a nightmare, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, Derek's story is one you're going to want to pay attention to. Alright, let's get into it. The thing about rock bottom is you don't usually see it coming. Or maybe you do, and you just tell yourself it's a temporary dip, a rough patch, something you'll climb out of once you catch your breath. For me, rock bottom looked like a Tuesday afternoon in a rental apartment in Chermside, sitting on a couch that came with the place, eating 2-minute noodles out of the pot because I couldn't be bothered with dishes. I was 56 years old. My divorce had been finalised 3 months earlier. My kids, grown and living their own lives in Sydney and Melbourne, sent the occasional text message that felt more like obligation than affection. And the business I'd spent 3 decades building, Nolan Electrical Services, had just been sold to a bigger firm for less than I'd hoped, but more than I feared. $480,000, minus the lawyer fees, minus the debt, minus half that went to Sharon in the settlement. I'd done the math 100 times. If I stayed in Brisbane, kept renting, lived modestly, maybe picked up some casual contract work, I could stretch that money until I hit pension age, maybe. It wasn't poverty, but it wasn't the retirement I'd imagined either. No caravan trips around Australia, no spoiling grandkids I didn't have yet. Just slow decline in a city that suddenly felt too expensive, too loud, too full of memories I wanted to forget. Sharon and I had been married for 26 years. I'm not going to sit here and tell you she was the villain or I was the hero. The truth is, we just wore each other down until there was nothing left but resentment and silent dinners and separate bedrooms. She wanted more, I worked too much. She found someone at her book club, one found out, and that was that. Clean break. Civil even. But civility doesn't fill the silence when you're sitting alone on a Saturday night watching replays of State of Origin matches from 10 years ago, drinking beer that tastes like cardboard, wondering when exactly your life became something you just endured instead of lived. That's when I found the videos. I'm sure you've seen them. Blokes my age, sometimes older, sometimes younger, standing on beaches in Thailand, grinning into phone cameras, talking about how they're living on $800 a month in a country where beer costs $2 and everyone smiles at you and the sun shines 300 days a year. Retirement havens, they called them. Pattaya, Chiang Mai, Hua Hin, Phuket. Places where Western money went 5 times further and life moved at a pace that didn't demand you prove your worth every waking moment. I watched one video, then another, then another. I fell down the rabbit hole. Forums full of divorced blokes just like me, swapping tips about visa runs and condo rentals and healthcare and the best places to eat for 50 baht. They talked about freedom, about reinvention, about leaving behind the grind and the grey skies and the loneliness that clung to you like damp clothing back home. And the women. Jesus, they talked about the women. Younger, beautiful, attentive, grateful for a good man who treated them right. I'm not stupid, all right? I knew it sounded too good to be true. But when you're 56 and your wife left you for a real estate agent named Craig and your kids can't be bothered to call unless they need something, the idea of being wanted, of being appreciated, of being seen as something other than a failure whose best years are behind him, That's a powerful, bloody drug. I told myself I was being practical. Thailand was cheaper. I could make my money last longer. Maybe even buy a small place, something with a view, live simply, enjoy my remaining years without scraping by. The romantic stuff, well, if it happened, I wasn't going over there to buy a bride or anything dodgy like that. I was just going to live. Really live. Maybe for the first time since I was 25 and still thought the world was full of possibilities instead of obligations. It took me 4 months to commit. 4 months of research, of watching videos, of reading forums, of lying to my brother about why I was asking questions about property management back home. 4 months of looking at the balance in my bank account and thinking about what that number meant in Australian dollars versus Thai baht. 480,000 Australian dollars was about 10.5 million baht. 10.5 million. The number felt obscene. I could live like a king. The first could live like a decent human being who didn't have to check the price of mints at Woolworths. I could matter again. So I did it. I gave notice on the Chermside apartment. I sold most of my furniture. I packed 2 suitcases with everything I thought I'd need. Clothes and laptop and medications and a few photos I couldn't bring myself to throw away. I bought a one-way ticket to Bangkok with a connection to Utapao Airport. My brother thought I was having a midlife crisis. My kids thought I was running away. Maybe they were both right. But when that plane lifted off the tarmac at Brisbane International, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Pattaya hit me like a slap. The humidity was the first thing, stepping off the plane into air so thick and wet it felt like breathing through a warm towel. Then the noise. Motorbikes everywhere, weaving through traffic with no apparent rules, horns honking, vendors shouting, music blaring from shop fronts, the constant thrum of a city that never quite settled into silence. The smell was a mix of grilled meat and exhaust fumes, and something floral I couldn't identify, sweet and cloying. And the heat. It was March, supposedly the hot season, and it was like standing too close to an oven that someone forgot to turn off. But underneath all that sensory chaos, there was something else. Energy, life, movement, colour. Neon signs in Thai script I couldn't read. Bars with open fronts spilling out music and laughter. Women in tight dresses and high heels standing in doorways calling out to passing men, "Hello, sexy man, where you go?" I wasn't offended. I wasn't scandalised. I was fascinated. This was nothing like Brisbane. This was nothing like anything I'd known. I'd arranged a condo rental online through an expat forum recommendation. 1 bedroom, 14th floor, partial ocean view in Jomtien, the quieter end of Pattaya. 12,000 baht a month, about 500 Australian dollars, utilities included. The building was tired but clean, staffed by security guards who smiled and waved every time I came through the lobby. My condo had tile floors, a balcony with a view of the sea if you leaned far enough to the right, a bedroom with a firm mattress, a kitchen I'd barely use, and air conditioning that rattled like a freight train but worked. It was perfect. That first week, I did what every new expat does. I explored. I walked the beach at sunrise, watched old Thai ladies doing Tai Chi on the sand, saw monks collecting alms outside 7-Eleven. I ate pad Thai from street carts for 60 baht and thought it was the best thing I'd ever tasted. I got a massage on the beach, 200 baht for an hour, and the tiny Thai woman who worked my shoulders made sounds like she was digging for buried treasure every time she hit a knot. I drank Chang beer at beachside bars where they cost 60 baht, about 250 Australian, and I watched the sunset over the Gulf of Thailand and thought, bloody hell, I actually did it. I actually escaped. The other expats were easy to spot. Older blokes, mostly, some alone, some with young Thai women draped on their arms. Brits, Aussies, Germans, Scandinavians, Americans. We'd nod at each other, that knowing acknowledgement. We'd made it out. We'd chosen paradise over obligation. At the bar I frequented, a place called Coconut Willie's right on Jomtien Beach, I started recognising faces. There was Graham, 72, from Manchester, who'd been in Thailand 15 years and spoke decent Thai. There was Henrik from Norway, 60-something, who lived on his naval pension and talked endlessly about how much cheaper everything was here. There was Jeff from Texas, divorced like me, who'd blown through one fortune on a Thai woman already and was working on spending his second. They welcomed me into the fold, bought me beers, gave advice, warned me about visa runs and dodgy lawyers and which hospitals to use if I got sick. It felt like camaraderie, like I'd found my tribe. Blokes who understood that sometimes you just needed to start over somewhere the past couldn't follow you. That's where I met Fon. It was my third week in Thailand. I was at Coconut Willie's, sitting at the bar, working through my third chang of the afternoon, watching Russian tourists take selfies in the surf. She was working there, serving drinks, clearing tables, laughing with customers in a mix of broken English and Thai. She wasn't what you'd call a typical bar girl. She wore jeans and a simple black tank top. Her hair pulled back in a ponytail, minimal makeup. She looked young, late 20s maybe, with skin the colour of caramel and a smile that seemed genuine rather than rehearsed. When she brought my beer, she didn't linger or flirt or ask me to buy her a drink. She just smiled, set it down and moved on. I liked that. It felt honest. Over the next few visits, we started talking. Small talk at first. Where are you from? How long you stay? Thailand. You like Pattaya? Her English was broken but charming, and I didn't mind repeating myself or speaking slowly. She told me her name was Fon, which meant rain. She was from Isan, the poor northeastern region everyone talked about, where most of the service workers in Pattaya came from. She'd come to Pattaya 3 years ago to work and send money home to her family. Her mother was sick, diabetes or something, I didn't quite catch it. She had brothers and sisters still in the village. She wasn't a bar girl, she insisted. Just a waitress. She wanted to save enough to open a small shop someday, maybe a salon or a food stall. Modest dreams. I found that refreshing. She asked about me too. Why I came to Thailand. What I did back in Australia. If I had family. I gave her the sanitized version. Retired electrician, divorced. Kids grown. Wanted a change. She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Maybe everyone who ended up in Pattaya was running from something. The first time we went out together outside the bar, it felt natural. She had a day off, and I'd mentioned wanting to see some of the temples around the area. She offered to take me on her motorbike. I know how that sounds. Middle-aged bloke, younger Thai woman, motorbike ride, but it didn't feel transactional. It felt like two people with time to kill and the shared loneliness neither of us wanted to name. We went to Wat Phra Yai, the big Buddha temple on the hill. She showed me how to take off my shoes, how to wave properly to the monks, how to light incense and make a small offering. She was patient with my ignorance, amused by my questions. Afterward, we stopped at a roadside sum tam stand, and she ordered for both of us spicy papaya salad that made my eyes water and sticky rice. I ate with my hands the way she showed me. She laughed at me, not meanly, just openly, like I was endearing in my incompetence. And I laughed too. For the first time in years, I felt light. We started spending more time together. She'd finish her shift at the bar and we'd grab dinner. Nothing fancy, just local places where she knew the owners and the food was cheap and good. She'd sit across from me, picking at grilled fish or lab moo, telling me stories about growing up in her village, about buffalo and rice paddies and festivals I'd never heard of. I told her about Brisbane, about footy and meat pies and summers at the beach. We didn't need to fill every silence. Sometimes we'd just sit and watch the chaos of Beach Road, motorbikes and ladyboys and tourists stumbling drunk between bars, and it felt comfortable. Easy. She never asked me for money. She never hinted at needing help. She just seemed to enjoy my company, and I sure as hell enjoyed hers. The shift happened gradually. One night, after dinner, she asked if she could come back to my condo to watch a movie. I said yes. We sat on the couch, aircon rattling, some Thai romantic comedy playing with English subtitles that made no sense. She leaned into me halfway through, her head on my shoulder, and I felt something I hadn't felt since the early years with Sharon. Connection. When she kissed me, it was soft and tentative, like a question rather than a demand. I kissed her back. That night she stayed over. She was gone by the time I woke up. No note, no message. I panicked for a moment, thought maybe I'd misread everything, maybe it was a mistake. But that afternoon, she texted me in broken English. Thank you for nice night. See you tomorrow. I smiled at my phone like a bloody teenager. That's how it started. The dream I didn't know I was allowed to have. The second chance I thought I'd already used up. Fon made me feel seen. She made me feel wanted. She made me feel like, maybe, just maybe, the best parts of my life weren't behind me after all. If only I'd known what I was actually signing up for. If only I'd asked the right questions. If only I'd been honest with myself about what I was really buying and what price I'd eventually pay. But I didn't. I just fell. Hard and fast. And completely. Because when you're lonely enough, hope doesn't need much evidence to grow roots. And by the time I realised those roots were wrapped around a foundation that was already crumbling, it was far too late to pull them out without tearing everything apart. 6 months in, and I'd become one of those blokes I used to judge from the safety of my Brisbane apartment, scrolling through expat forums and thinking, how do they not see what's happening? But when you're living it, when you're the one waking up next to someone who makes you feel 20 years younger, when you're the one who finally has a purpose beyond counting down the days until pension age, you develop an extraordinary talent for not seeing what you don't want to see. Fon had moved into my condo by month 4. It happened gradually, the way these things do. An extra toothbrush in the bathroom, some clothes in the closet, then a drawer, then half the wardrobe. She'd quit her job at Coconut Willie's after I offered to take care of her expenses. Why should she work, I'd said, when I had more than enough for both of us? She'd protested at first, said she didn't want to be a burden, but I insisted. I wanted to be the kind of man who could provide, who could make life easier for someone I cared about. And truthfully, I liked having her around full time. Liked waking up to her making terrible instant coffee in the kitchen. Liked coming home from my morning beach walks to find her still in bed, scrolling through Thai TikTok videos on her phone. It felt domestic. It felt real. The money started flowing in ways I didn't track closely at first. 20,000 baht a month to her mother in the village. That was the baseline. Fon explained it carefully, apologetically. Her mother had diabetes, needed medication, and the family farm wasn't producing much this season. 20,000 baht was about 800 Australian dollars. That seemed reasonable. Generous even. I was living in a paradise for peanuts. What was 800 a month to help a family in need? Then it became 30,000. Her mother's medication had gotten more expensive. The local clinic couldn't help anymore. She needed to go to the hospital in Udon Thani. Okay, 30,000. About 1,200 Australian. Still manageable. I had plenty. Then the emergency started. Fon's cousin needed university tuition. 40,000 baht, one-time payment. Her brother had a motorbike accident. No insurance, medical bills piling up. 50,000 baht. The roof on the family house was leaking, needed repairs before monsoon season. Another 60,000. Her sister was getting married, needed help with expenses because face was important in the village. 80,000. Each time, Fon would come to me with tears in her eyes, apologetic, embarrassed, saying she hated asking, but her family had no one else. Each time, I'd transfer the money from my Thai bank account, watch the balance drop, and tell myself it was temporary. Emergencies don't last forever. Things would stabilize. The thing is, I never saw receipts. I never met her mother or her brother or her cousin or her sister. Fon always had reasons why I couldn't visit the village. Too far, too boring for me. Her family didn't speak English. They'd be embarrassed by their simple house. I accepted these explanations because I wanted to. Because questioning her felt like accusing her, and I wasn't that guy. I wasn't one of those suspicious Farang boyfriends who treated their Thai partners like criminals. I trusted her. Or more accurately, I needed to trust her because the alternative was admitting I was being played. And I wasn't ready for that kind of honesty yet. My days developed a rhythm that felt comfortable at first, then gradually suffocating in ways I didn't recognize until much later. Wake up around 8, Fon usually still sleeping or on her phone. Walk down to the beach, get a coffee from the 7-Eleven, sit and watch the water, back to the condo by 10. Maybe we'd go out for lunch, Thai food usually, places where she knew the vendors and could negotiate prices I'd never get on my own. Afternoons were hers. She'd meet friends, she said. Go shopping, get her nails done. I didn't mind. I'd go to Coconut Willie's, meet up with Graham and Henrik and Jeff, drink Chang and swap stories about life in the land of smiles. We were all living some version of the same existence. Older blokes with younger Thai girlfriends, all of us helping family in the villages. All of us convinced we'd figured out the secret to happiness that everyone back home was too rigid or too scared to pursue. Jeff was the cautionary tale we all pointed to while ignoring the similarities in our own situations. He was on his second Thai girlfriend, after the first one had cleaned him out of about $200,000, before disappearing back to Isan with a Thai boyfriend nobody had bothered to tell Jeff about. But Jeff would sit there, beer in hand, telling us his new girlfriend was different. Som was genuine. Som really loved him. Tom's family actually needed help, unlike all those other bar girls who were just running scams. We'd nod along, buying rounds, telling ourselves we were smarter than Jeff. Our situations were different. Our girls were different. The cognitive dissonance was spectacular. Henrik had a theory he'd share after his fourth beer. Thai women weren't like Western women, he'd say. They understood traditional roles. They appreciated a man who could provide. It wasn't transactional, it was cultural. In the West, we'd lost that. Women wanted men to be everything. Providers, sensitive partners, equals, leaders, followers, whatever suited them in the moment. But here, things were clearer. You took care of them, they took care of you. It was honest. I wanted to believe Henrik. It made everything feel less pathetic, less like I was a lonely old man buying companionship, and more like I was participating in a cultural exchange that Western feminism had made impossible back home. The narrative was comforting. The truth was considerably less so. By month 9, I'd stopped checking my Australian bank account regularly. I had the Thai account for day-to-day expenses, and that seemed to drain faster than I expected, but cost of living, you know? Supporting Fon, helping her family, going out to eat, the occasional weekend trip to Bangkok or down to Koh Samet. Life wasn't meant to be lived watching spreadsheets. That's what I told myself. But the math was doing its work whether I paid attention or not. Rent, 12,000 baht a month. Food and basic expenses, maybe 20,000 if we were careful, which we weren't. Money to Fon's family, anywhere from 30 to 80,000 depending on the month's emergencies. Entertainment, drinks at the bar, massages, the occasional splurge on a nice seafood dinner, another 20,000. I was burning through 70 to 150,000 baht a month. That's 3 to 6,000 Australian dollars. Multiply that by 18 months, and you start to see the problem I was aggressively not seeing. Then there was the stuff I just bought because it seemed to make Fon happy. A new smartphone, because hers was old and slow. 25,000 baht. Gold jewellery for her birthday. A necklace and bracelet from a shop on Beach Road where the lady assured me it was real gold, good quality. 60,000 baht. A down payment on a small food cart business she wanted to start with her friend. Something about selling grilled pork skewers near the beach. 80,000 baht for equipment and permits. The food cart never materialised. The friend changed her mind, Fon said. The money was gone though. And the motorbike. Jesus, the motorbike. She needed transportation, she said. Couldn't always catch motorbike taxis, wasn't safe, took too long. A modest Honda Wave would be fine. I ended up buying her a Yamaha Aerox scooter because the salesman convinced me it was safer, more reliable, better for a woman. 120,000 baht. About 5 grand Australian. She was thrilled, hugged me, told me I was the best Farang boyfriend. Rode it for a week before mostly leaving it parked at the condo, taking taxis anyway because the traffic scared her. I didn't complain. What's money for if not to make the people you love happy? But Fon was changing. Or maybe I was just finally seeing her clearly. She was on her phone constantly, texting in rapid-fire Thai that I couldn't read, smiling at the screen in ways she used to smile at me. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd say, friends, family, nothing important. When I suggested we spend more time together, actually do things instead of just existing in the condo, she'd sigh and say she was tired, or had plans, or I was being too serious. The sex became less frequent, more mechanical when it happened. She stopped initiating. She stopped asking about my day. She started coming home later from her afternoons out. Sometimes not until 9 or 10 at night, smelling like cigarettes and Thai whiskey. When I asked where she'd been, she'd snap at me. Why you always check me? You my father, I not your property. I'd back off, apologise, tell myself I was being controlling, that she was young and needed space, that I couldn't expect her to spend every waking moment with me. The blokes at the bar noticed before I did. Or maybe they knew all along and were just being polite. One afternoon, Graham pulled me aside, bought me a beer, and said, mate, I don't want to overstep, but I saw Fon the other day down on Walking Street with a Thai bloke. Young guy. They look pretty cosy. You know about him? My stomach dropped. I told Graham it must have been her brother or a cousin. Graham nodded slowly, the way you nod at someone whose delusions you're not ready to shatter completely. Yeah, probably. Just thought you should know. Jeff chimed in from down the bar. They all have Thai boyfriends, mate. Every single one of them. You're the ATM. He's the real deal. That's just how it works here. I wanted to punch Jeff. Instead, I finished my beer and went home, where Fawn was getting ready to go out, putting on makeup, wearing a tight dress I hadn't seen before. I asked where she was going. Out with friends. What friends? She rolled her eyes. You don't know them. Why you care? I care because you're my girlfriend, I said. She laughed. Not like mean laugh, more like surprise. Your girlfriend. I live here, yes. But I not belong to you. Different culture, baby. You don't understand. And she left. I sat in that condo with the ocean view I could barely see from the balcony, drinking warm chang from the fridge, wondering when exactly I'd lost control of the narrative I'd been telling myself. It all came crashing down on a Tuesday. I'd woken up planning to do some financial housekeeping I'd been avoiding for months. Logged into my Australian account to check the balance, maybe transfer some more money to my Thai account since it seemed to be running low faster than expected. The number on the screen didn't make sense at first. $86,412. I refreshed the page. Same number. That couldn't be right. I'd started with $480,000, 18 months ago. I pulled up the transaction history, the long, damning scroll of transfers to my Thai account. 10,000, 20,000, 15,000. The pattern repeated for months. I opened a spreadsheet, started tracking. Rent, food, entertainment, money to Fawn, the motorbike, the jewellery, the business that never happened, the endless family emergencies. The math was brutal and unforgiving. I'd spent roughly 400,000 Australian dollars in 18 months. That's over 22 grand a month, more than most people earn. I'd burned through my retirement savings faster than if I'd stayed in Brisbane, and I had nothing to show for it except a condo I rented, a motorbike that wasn't in my name, and a girlfriend who was probably screwing someone else when she wasn't pretending to tolerate my company. I sat there staring at the numbers for an hour. Felt the panic rise in my chest like water filling a locked room. $86,000 wouldn't last 2 years in Thailand at my current burn rate. Maybe 3 if I cut back drastically. Then what? Move back to Australia with nothing? Live on the pension in a country I could barely afford anymore. I'd sold everything. I told everyone I was done with the old life, and now I was 58 years old, broke and alone in a foreign country where I didn't speak the language, didn't understand the culture, and apparently didn't even know when I was being robbed. When Fawn came home that night, I was ready. I'd rehearsed what I'd say. Calm, rational, not accusatory. We need to talk about money. We need to cut back. I can't keep supporting your family like this. I need to make my savings last. She listened, face blank. Then she exploded. You think you so good? You think you do me favour? My family need help. You say you love me, but you just cheap Charlie like all Farang. You don't understand Thai culture. You don't understand nothing. I tried to explain. It wasn't about being cheap. It was about survival. I was running out of money. She laughed, bitter and sharp. You have money, you rich Farang. You just don't want to help anymore because you're bored of me. I told her that wasn't true. I told her I loved her. But we needed to be realistic. She started throwing things in a bag. Her clothes, her makeup, the jewellery I'd bought her. I asked what she was doing. She turned to me, eyes hard. I go stay with friend. You want to be alone? Okay. Be alone. And she left. Slammed the door hard enough to shake the walls. She didn't come back that night. Or the next day. I called her phone, straight to voicemail. Sent line messages that went unread. I told myself she needed space, needed time to cool down, that we'd work it out. On day 3, I went to Coconut Willie's. Asked the owner, Som, an older Thai woman who'd run the place for 20 years, if she'd seen Fawn. Som looked at me with something like pity. Fawn. She still work here, mister. Every night. She not tell you. My brain struggled to process that. What do you mean she still works here? She quit months ago. Som shook her head slowly. No quit. She work every night. She have regular customer, Thai boyfriend too. Everyone know. You nice man. I sorry. The floor dropped out from under me. Everything I'd believed, everything I'd built in my head, the entire story I'd been living, it was just one version. A sanitized fairy tale I'd convinced myself was real, while everyone else, including Fawn, had been living in reality. I went back to the condo. Her key was on the counter. The closet was empty. My laptop was gone. The gold jewelry, gone. The cash I'd kept in the bedside drawer for emergencies, about 30,000 baht, gone. She'd blocked me online, on Facebook, on her phone. I filed a police report at the tourist police station on Pattaya Sai Song Road. The officer, a bored-looking Thai cop who'd clearly heard this story 1,000 times, took notes without enthusiasm. "This girlfriend problem, sir. Not really crime. She live with you, you give money to her. She leave. This happened many time. You have contract, marriage certificate." I had nothing. No proof. No legal standing. Just the smoking ruins of my retirement fund, and a story so common it didn't even warrant sympathy anymore. The other expats at the bar were kind, in their way. Bought me drinks. Shared their own stories of loss. Everyone had one. Everyone had paid the stupid tax. Graham told me about his first girlfriend in Pattaya, who disappeared with 50 grand and his passport. Henrik talked about the business he'd invested in with a Thai partner who vanished once the money cleared. Jeff, on his second round of the same disaster, just raised his beer and said, "Welcome to the club, mate. We're all idiots here." That's when it hit me. This wasn't unique. This wasn't even unusual. This was the pattern. Lonely Western men, recent life upheavals, vulnerability disguised as adventure, and Thai women doing what they needed to do to survive in an economy that gave them limited options. I wasn't a victim of some elaborate scam. I was a willing participant in a transaction I'd refused to acknowledge as a transaction because it hurt less to believe in love. The reflection came slowly, painfully, over the weeks that followed. I cut back drastically on expenses, moved to a cheaper condo, 8,000 baht a month, no ocean view, no pool, no fantasy. Stopped going to the bars, stopped pretending I was living the dream. I had $86,000 left. If I was careful, truly careful, I could stretch it maybe 3 more years in Thailand. But then what? Stay here, old and broke and alone, dependent on the kindness of other expats who were themselves barely hanging on? Or go home and face the humiliation of admitting failure to my brother, my kids, everyone who'd watched me sell everything to chase paradise? I called my brother, Steve, on a Saturday morning, his time. The conversation was brief and humiliating. "Steve, I need to ask you something. I'm coming back to Australia. I've made some mistakes here. I'm a bit short on money. Can I crash with you for a while until I figure things out?" Silence on the other end. Then, Jesus, Derek. What happened? I told him a sanitized version. Relationship didn't work out. Expenses were higher than expected. Made some poor investments. He didn't push for details. He just sighed and said, "Yeah, mate, you can stay in the spare room, but you're going to need to get work. I can't support you. I know, thank you. I really appreciate it." The relief was outweighed by the shame. Before I booked my flight back to Brisbane, I let myself think clearly about what I'd actually lost. Not just the money, though 400 grand was a lot to piss away in 18 months, but the future I'd imagined. The dignity. The belief that I still had something to offer someone, that I could be loved for who I was rather than what I could provide. Fon hadn't promised me forever. She'd never said she loved me. Not really. She'd just let me believe what I needed to believe because it benefited her, and I built an entire relationship on a foundation of wishful thinking and economic desperation. Hers, not just mine. She was 28 years old from a poor village, working in Pattaya to send money home, doing what thousands of women do to survive. Was she a villain? Or was she just pragmatic? And what did that make me? Not a victim. Victims don't have $480,000 to lose in the first place. I was a fool. A lonely, desperate fool who tried to buy his way out of pain and ended up paying for a lesson he could have learned for free if he'd been honest with himself from the start. Thailand wasn't the problem. Pattaya wasn't the problem. Even Fon wasn't really the problem. The problem was me. I'd come here running from loneliness, from failure, from the wreckage of a life that hadn't turned out the way I'd hoped. I hadn't come to build something new. I'd come to escape something old. And you can't build a future on escapism. You can only delay the inevitable reckoning. Mine came with an $86,000 price tag and a one-way ticket back to sleeping on my brother's couch at 58 years old. The dream was over. The nightmare was just the hangover. And I had no one to blame but the man staring back at me from the bathroom mirror of a cheap condo in Jomtien, looking older and more broken than he'd ever imagined possible. So here we are, folks. Back to where this story began. Derek's sitting in that budget condo, plane ticket printed, suitcase half packed, staring at his life and wondering how it all went sideways so fast. But before we close this one out, I want you to understand something important. Derek's story isn't special. It's not even rare. Across Thailand, across Southeast Asia, across anywhere Western money and local desperation intersect, this same story plays out every single day. Different names, different faces, same script. Lonely man seeks fresh start. Finds someone who makes him feel wanted. Mistakes transaction for connection. Pays for that mistake in ways that go way beyond money. Derek isn't stupid. He's not uniquely naive. He's just human. And loneliness, real bone-deep loneliness, is one hell of a drug. It makes you see what you want to see. It makes you believe what you need to believe. It makes you spend $400,000 in 18 months, chasing a feeling you haven't felt since you were young and the world still made sense. Now here's the thing I need you to hear. This isn't a story about not trusting Thai women. This isn't a story about Thailand being dangerous or Southeast Asia being full of scammers. There are thousands of genuine, loving, cross-cultural relationships happening right now in Thailand and everywhere else. People who meet, fall in love, build lives together despite language barriers and cultural differences and all the skepticism from people like us who've seen too many Derek stories. This is a story about knowing yourself, about understanding why you're doing what you're doing, about asking hard questions before you sell everything and move halfway around the world. Are you running towards something or away from something? Because here's the brutal truth. Running towards something, building a life with intention and clarity, that's got a chance. Running away from something, trying to escape pain or failure or loneliness, that's just delaying the inevitable. The pain follows you, the failure catches up. The loneliness, it doesn't care what country you're in or how cheap the beer is or how beautiful the person next to you is. It finds you anyway. Derek thought Thailand would save him. But Thailand was never the answer because Thailand wasn't the question. The question was, can you be okay with yourself? Can you build a life that has meaning and purpose and connection without needing someone else to validate your worth? Can you be alone without being lonely? Derek couldn't. And so he paid $500,000 to learn what he could have learned for free if he'd just been willing to sit with his pain instead of running from it. The saddest part, he's not even angry at Fon, not really. He understands, in a way that hurts even more than anger would, that she was just trying to survive, just trying to help her family, just doing what she needed to do in a system that doesn't give women from poor Isan villages many options. He's angry at himself for being so desperate, for being so blind, for confusing loneliness with love and calling it culture when it was just commerce. So if you're sitting there watching this, thinking about making a similar move, chasing a similar dream, let me leave you with this. Do the work first. Heal the wounds. Build a life you don't need to escape from. And then, if you still want to move to Thailand or Bali or wherever, do it. But do it from a place of strength, not weakness. Do it because you're choosing adventure, not fleeing pain. Because paradise is only as real as you are with yourself. And if you're running from who you are, you'll find that person waiting for you at the airport, no matter how far you fly. Derek learned that lesson at 58 for $400,000. You can learn it right now for free, just by being honest with yourself about why you want what you want. Take care of yourself out there. Wherever you are, whoever you're with, make sure you know the difference between being loved and being needed, between connection and transaction, between running towards something and running away. And if you've got a story like Derek's, or if you've watched someone you care about go through something similar, drop a comment below. Share your experience. Maybe your story keeps the next person from making the same expensive mistake. Until next time, stay smart, stay safe, and remember, the only paradise worth finding is the one you build inside yourself first. Everything else is just scenery. Thanks for watching Bargirl Baddies. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.